Welcome to JP's Full Throttle, where he interviews professionals across motorsports. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Here is our host, Justin.
Well, hello and welcome to the first ever interview with someone from NASCAR. Pete is with us today, uh, magazine director for communications at NASCAR. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, JP. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming on.
It's my
And
privilege. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
yeah, so my first question is, um, so I guess I got good experience from mobility pit box and what you guys are doing. So guys, talk to me what that process was like building the mobility pit box for fans with disabilities and making them happy. I know you guys try to be a family sport.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you had a great experience. I believe you're at Kansas Speedway, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm so excited you had a chance to experience the mobility pit box. I think it's such an important innovation for our sport, and all the credit goes to Toyota, one of our OEM partners that really a couple years ago recognized a need, which is that, if you look at all the different ways that you can experience a NASCAR race, I don't know if there's anything cooler than being on the pit box, right? To be right there, right close to the action, right on pit road. And it was actually a couple years ago where I believe it was NASCAR and Toyota were entertaining guests, and there was a person with a physical disability that realized they can't physically get aboard the pit boxes there that were used for hosting. And to their credit, they said this is a real need. Like this is not an accessible resource or experience, and it needs to be made so. So to their credit, they essentially built this experience, a prototype that would allow all guests, regardless of their mobility issues or not, to be able to enjoy the race from pit road, right? And then that's an unbelievable experience. And we're a couple years into kind of piloting and testing. This is very kind of early in its journey. Toyota, together with NASCAR, has taken the mobility pit box to over 20 races in its first year last year, and again, working towards over 20 this year. And it's really about making sure that everybody can experience this amazing experience. Everyone who is passionate about our sport, everyone who wants to attend our races, isn't limited by a disability and has the opportunity and the access to enjoy what makes this sport so special, which is really that unbelievable, up close, visceral experience that fans get when they actually come to a race. I didn't grow up a NASCAR fan. I was kind of late to the sport and privileged to have worked in the industry almost 20 years. And I don't think there's a better way to experience rat NASCAR than to come to a race. And when you have the access and the ability to experience the infield, pit road, it just creates a truly dynamic, memorable experience that our fans really enjoy. And so, really a big shout out and kudos to Toyota for leading the charge here. It's humbling to be part of NASCAR and to be able to assist with the mobility pit box. And I think we're really excited to see where it goes. We're only in year two, and I think there's a big road ahead and a lot of opportunity to serve many fans like yourself. And I'm just so happy you had a great experience. Sounds like Kansas was awesome.
Yes. Um, and so talk talk to me about when you talk about NASCAR and the want to make it accessible to others. When the mobility pit bus came about, I think there's a team of people at NASCAR that said, this is a good idea. How can we make this happen?
Well, I think it starts with the idea that, we are an inclusive sport, right? We want everybody that has a passion for our sport to be able to experience it, right? We want to remove any barriers to access that we can. And I think it's really with that philosophy in mind, and the philosophy that our partners at Toyota, they hold dear as well, that was really the impetus behind this. And I think um, that's why it's so important. I think, when we think about accessibility, um, it's wherever there is a barrier, we have to remove it. And I think that's why when you look at, I'll point out the Chicago street race as an example. We're pretty excited. Chicago's coming back for year three here in just a couple weeks, and that's part of a strategy at NASCAR where we're bringing the sport to new fans. Right, we're hosting in new cities at new venues. The Chicago street race has been such an amazing experience. And as we do that, accessibility has to be a priority, right? And that track is under the leadership of President Julie Giese. She has an accessibility coordinator on her team that's responsible for making sure that the entire track footprint, the entire experience, wherever a fan could go, that we're thinking about accessibility at every turn. So it's certainly a tactical part of what we do in our operations, but I would call it more of a philosophy, right? Like this is part of that inclusive philosophy that we have as NASCAR to make sure that, like, if you love NASCAR, if you love best in class stock car racing, you can experience and access our sport like everyone can. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, how did the Metro City race come out for you guys on NASCAR? And I mean, ba basically, you said crack personnel is very important to you guys. So, I mean, when it comes to the mobility pit box, who's the first one that was like, you know what, this is really important that we have this in NASCAR? And I know you touched on it a little bit,
Yeah.
that a fan came forward and said, hey, we need something to for all fans to enjoy NASCAR. But things take years to develop. So when did you guys start really looking at this as a possibility?
Yeah. No, I would say a couple years ago, and it was really back to Toyota. To their credit, they said, there's a problem here. We don't have a way for people with physical disabilities to enjoy a pit box experience. We have to figure that out. And they said, they're not just pointing out a need, and then this is where it's awesome, right? Like they're conceiving a solution, right? And so they developed this pit box. They partnered with NASCAR to test it, to bring it to tracks, and it's really, the impetus. It started with Toyota, and I think that's what, JP. I know you know this about NASCAR. We're an industry comprised of countless stakeholders, partners, tracks teams. Like we're all part of the NASCAR family, and we all act as stewards of NASCAR, the NASCAR community. It doesn't matter if you're the sanctioning body or one of our OEMs like Toyota. We are all custodians of the sport, if you think about it that way. And I think this is, Toyota really stepping up here to work with NASCAR to find a solution. A couple years ago, is really a textbook example of that. And one of the things I love about this story, JP, is we think about the sponsorship landscape. There's a lot of sponsors doing a lot of different things, and it can be territorial, and there's conflicts of interest. And what Toyota said was like, "Hey, we'll bring this to bear. We'll create this experience. We'll create this solution, but we want it to be available for the entire industry, right? Like if Ford wants to use this and to take guests that have physical disabilities and to leverage its experience, then they are more than welcome." And so it's a resource for the entire industry, which is really what I've come to most appreciate about it. And then we've seen a lot of industry stakeholders, whether they be sponsors, whether they be race teams, it could be nonprofit organizations that we have relationships with. I believe it was in Texas where we worked with the Paralyzed Veterans of America, right? And so we worked with their group, and they had members of their organizations that had physical disabilities, and they had a chance to really enjoy the Texas race seated atop the mobility pit box. So again, Toyota really, you know, a tremendous amount of props and a show of appreciation for what they've done. NASCAR has been humbled to kind of help carry it forward and partner with them. We're really excited to see where it goes too, because JP, we're just getting started here, and it's exciting to see, how many people can use and benefit from the experience in the years ahead.
Yeah. So, Pete, uh, so I just want to touch on a couple other things with you, and
Would love
that
to.
is, can you shed some light on anything NASCAR might be working on for fans with disabilities in the future, or do you not want to get into that today?
Oh, I can share some top line thoughts, which is, operationally, we just have to make sure that we're continuing to prioritize accessibility. And I think as we continue to evolve the schedule, as we continue to bring races to new markets, as we continue to assess our operations at tracks where we've had races for decades, just making sure that we're thinking about accessibility at every turn, right? It's not only about what's up to code, but rather what are some creative ways that we can just make sure that we're not lagging behind, where we're on the front foot, so to speak. And I think back to Chicago, we're first of all really excited to bring the mobility pit box to Chicago. There's an organization in Chicago called the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, and what they do, they serve a number of people with disabilities, whether they are stroke victims, victims of traumatic brain injuries or spinal cord injuries, and they're going to bring members of their organization to the race. But one of the things that we've done in Chicago is we've appointed an accessibility coordinator. So, like mentioned earlier, someone who's really that their job is to assess, at every point in the footprint, where are the opportunities to make things more accessible. So again, I'm sure we'll continue to have programs and experiences. You'll see the mobility pit box continue to expand, but it's also about making sure that we're embedding that mindset and preaching that mindset across our organization. So from an operations standpoint, and certainly from a facility and a hosting standpoint, we're doing everything in our power to make sure that our race events, which, as you know, JP, because you've been a fan at a race, they're attended by hundreds of thousands, millions of fans over time and over the course of our race season, that we're continuing to be really proactive and thoughtful about how our events are run and what we're doing to accommodate.
I I really appreciate the feedback you gave today on Full Throttle, but I just have to know, who is your favorite driver in the industry right now, to say, who's Pete looking at for the championship, and why are you looking at that driver?
Oof. So you're asking a NASCAR employee what their favorite driver. I don't know if I can answer that entirely, but I will say I have some drivers I pull for. I think, JP, just to give you a little bit about, my background. So I have the good fortune and the privilege to shepherd a platform called NASCAR Impact. And what NASCAR Impact, it's a brand new platform here at NASCAR. And I think that the simple way to think about it is, what are we doing to serve the communities and the environment where we live and where we work and where we race, right? And so, we announced NASCAR Impact back in 2023. We're preparing to put out our first impact report later this year, which will talk about all the work that we're doing to better and to improve and to strengthen our racing communities. And so, being able to shepherd that that work is really exciting, and I consider it an honor to be able to A, work in sports, but B, do a job that leverages the power and the influence of sport to make the world a better place. That, in my opinion, is a dream job. We lead that charge and we strategize, but the reality is we can't do any of that without the support of our industry. And so back to that comment about the industry being a family, like we're all pulling on the rope in the same direction when it comes to putting on best in class race events, but also when it comes to having an impact. And so we've been really, really fortunate to have drivers, the stars of our sport, who are very like-minded. And I think, JP, this. These are drivers that care about their fans. They care about the needs of their communities. When we had Hurricane Helene back in the fall, you saw drivers spend their time. You saw former drivers, Hall of Fame drivers, you know, commandeering helicopters and bringing, donated items directly to those affected up in the mountains here in Appalachia. It's just a community of competitors that are best in class, world class athletes, but also care deeply. And so through our platform, NASCAR Impact, we've had a lot of drivers raise their hand and say, I want to help. There may be a STEM event where we're bringing, science and technology to life for middle school students, or we have a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club where we bring them to the track and teach them about all the different career opportunities in our sport. We have drivers that raise their hand constantly to support those initiatives. And think about Ryan Blaney, who we just had in Chicago, interacting with 600 kids at what we call Steam Fest. Or I think about Daniel Suarez, who countless times has engaged with our Boys and Girls Club relationship, or Austin Dillon, who's just been a big proponent of what we're doing from a military support standpoint. It feels really good to be able to plan and strategize and support nonprofits or other community organizations with the help of drivers that are equally as passionate about it. So while I have my favorite drivers on the track, I really am excited by the breadth and scope of competitors that we have that care about impact and care about the responsibility they have to help make the world a better place.
And I echo that as a fan, as a reporter. Um, it's it's an honor to watch your sport and watch it grow. Um, watch the mobility pit boss, watch you guys get better at what you bring to the fans. Um, your TV partners, Fox, NBC, TNT, and Prime Video. Um, so it's just been an honor, sure, having you on Full Throttle, and thank you for being willing to take the time to help tell the story of not only the mobility pit boss, but I really hope my viewers got a little insight from you on just what it takes to run a big organization like NASCAR. And Pete, on behalf of Full Throttle, I thank you. And this has been Full Throttle with JP. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, JP. Appreciate it.